Sir, the target is in sight and the missile tubes are loaded. Permission to fire? Permission granted, Lieutenant. Do you know what they say, Lieutenant? No, sir. What do they say? Fuck around. Find out. Oh, hey, I didn't see you there. Me? I was just taking care of some unfinished business. Anyways, welcome back to episode 1 of Conquering the Depths, where I will be beating the Neater campaign on the highest difficulty. Now, let us begin. Alright then, I guess I should explain a little bit about the game and how it works before I actually start the campaign. So you, the player, are this little guy called Rambot. Canonically, you grew up with your mother who taught you everything you know about building weapons of mass destruction, which seems like kind of a weird thing to teach your kid, but who am I to judge? You and your mother survived together for many years until one day you discover that she has been kidnapped. Sometime after that, the notorious Captain Sal of the Deepwater Guard takes you under his wing. You stay with Sal as a pirate for several years until one day you happen upon a fortress in the sea with your mother and long-lost father chained up to it. The captain laughs and blows the fortress apart, leaving you to rot in the wreckage. That day, something inside you snapped. Every single lord, high priest, general, or supreme commander of every last nation on Neater is going to pay for what they had done to you in the world. You soon set off for the Golden Trench, the largest source of untapped wealth on the planet, and the perfect catalyst to fuel your unstoppable war effort. Anyways, enough of the dramatic monologue. Let's get into the actual campaign. You manage to find a floating garbage patch near the Golden Trench, and set up a small fortress to harvest its materials before turning to the much larger prize nearby. So, first of all, materials. What are they? Well, they are the building block upon which every other resource in the game is made, and you can harvest them at resource zones, which are represented by these little green rings. The amount of resources each zone contains depends on the resource cap in the world that you're on. And for Neater, one we're on right now, this cap is roughly 100 million total materials, and this means that the materials used to build every single craft or fortress, and to fill up every single resource zone add up to that resource limit. If a craft is destroyed or as materials are used up to fuel engines, fire weapons, or create commodities, those lost resources are put back into the resource zones. And now that you know how materials work, this is our standard material gatherer, Steven. Say hi to Steven, everybody. He is equipped with 2 small missile turrets, a large amount of resource containers, and he runs on fully renewable energy, but that does make him slightly more expensive initially. Anyways, back to the campaign. The Golden Trench is both the deepest and most plentiful vein of valuable ore in the world, producing a ridiculous 275 materials per second. And for comparison, the garbage patch that the starting fortress is built over only produces 42 per second. Unfortunately, according to the lore, the Council of Neater has decreed that nobody is allowed to mine the Golden Trench, and doing so is an act of aggression against every single nation on the Council. And so, this is where the fun begins. So, before all hell breaks loose, there is an hour-long period of peace that you can use to capture territory and stockpile resources. So, let's go over the plan. Step 1. Take as many resource zones as possible in the hour I have where the Council of Neater convenes and the war begins. This will ensure that I have a strong foundation for every other step of the plan. Step 2. Declare war on some of the easier factions down near the bottom of the map, destroy them, and take their resources. Step 3. Engage and destroy every single remaining faction on the map in a massive war, taking their resources and destroying their fortresses as I go. Step 4. Celebrate my victory and look upon a grateful planet with the warmongering nations of the Council eradicated. Obviously, there is some nuance and strategy in those steps, but those are the basics. And so, implementing this plan, I immediately build several spy satellites and put them into orbit. These extremely ugly and primitive Hermes-class spy sats are small, fast, run on renewable energy, and have a big antenna on the bottom, so they can see your search history, log into your alternate accounts, and expose your filthy, disgusting secrets to the world. These little guys get sent to capture territory by idling in one spot for about 10 to 15 minutes per tile. Expanding outwards, I'm slapping down resource gatherers and fortresses as I go, aiming to build up a large stockpile of material that I'm going to need later. Over the Golden Trench, I build the Cold Iron Fortress, a monolithic structure armed with a swarm of medium missiles and 4 particle accelerator cannons. Anyways, with about 10 minutes left, I had finished placing resource harvesters and claiming territory, so I send my spy sats back to the Cold Iron Fortress and wait. All is looking good so far, and with the end of the era of peace comes the Every once in a while, the 8 factions of Nidar will meet with each other to make declarations of war and peace, exchanging commodities in the form of bribes and rewards. Taking the council members' bribes can be extremely lucrative, but do be careful that you don't get in too far over your head because you see a big number. As you can see, some of the options are grayed out, and this is because some of the factions are allies with each other, and declaring war on one while convincing the other to stay out of the conflict usually takes a pretty hefty bribe that I currently can't afford. Anyways, I settled on fighting the Lightning Hoods and Onyx Watch for the first council, and this is because both factions are almost entirely unthreatening to me. So taking on 2 of the weakest factions in the game and getting paid more than 300,000 commodities to do it is practically a dream come true, when every faction apparently sees me as a quote, existential threat that few would risk dismissing. As you can see from the summary screen, some of the other factions have also declared war on each other. Notably, the Grey Talons declared war on the Steel Striders and the Twin Guard. This is good, because it means they will waste each other's time and resources squabbling while I do my work down south. Okay, quick faction review. The Onyx Watch's military consists of massive armored behemoths called castle ships. They are often outfitted with large cram or advanced cannons, though they do occasionally carry missiles and torpedoes. These guys are essentially the kings of straight-up ship-on-ship warfare, but they are extremely weak to anything they can't hit with their slow-moving shells. The Lightning Hood's design motto can be summarized as Fast Glass Cannon. They employ devastating advanced weaponry like plasma cannons, PACs, and lasers, but they don't have much armor to speak of. However, they compensate for this by being some of the most nimble crafts, if not the most nimble crafts around. The best way to beat them is to use their own advanced weaponry against them. Mostly because, as far as I know, a laser is pretty hard to dodge. Welcome to the tactical map. I'm occasionally going to bring this up to show where important locations are and where battles are taking place. So, this is where my territory is, and this is where the Onyx Watch and Lightning Hoods are. Anyways, enough yapping, time for the campaign to begin for real. Almost immediately after the council ends, the Lightning Hoods sent several small crafts into my territory. Unfortunately for them, I have the perfect vehicle to destroy their lightly armored POSs. That vehicle is a cruiser armed with particle accelerator cannons. Once it's finished, I immediately send it into combat against the small planes trying to steal my territory. Dickheads. Cruiser armed with particle accelerator cannons. Introducing the Artemis-class cruiser. Coming in at around 300,000 materials, she is outfitted with 3 twin-lens PACs and a swarm of medium missiles. Designed before I started this campaign, she has been a reliable craft since her development, particularly suited to swatting skimmers and aircraft out of the sky. Anyways, now that the cruiser has arrived at its target, let's go over the pre-battle screen. Essentially, this is a tactical interface that you can use before a battle starts to move crafts around, give supplies to those crafts, say what order they should spawn in, because there is a limit on how many crafts from each faction can spawn in at once, and you can change that amount with this slider here. Anyways, let the battle begin. And it's dead. That was easy. But why was it easy? Simple. Every non-player controlled craft in the game has to have at least one of these AI mainframe blocks that will control a craft's movement, weapons, and more in the absence of an actual player, and these mainframes are vulnerable to EMP damage. So most of them are wrapped in EMP shielding like a Faraday cage. However, this little airplane did not have any EMP shielding, and my cruiser has a PAC that does EMP damage. So one little hit from the PAC, and I essentially gave this craft a lobotomy. Anyways, I also put together a squadron of planes to go fight the Onyx Watch on the Western Front. And if you remember what I said in the faction review for the Onyx Watch earlier, then you should know they are very, very weak to aircraft. And so this should be a pretty easy battle. Wait, is that a lightning goods craft? Oh no. Well, shit. There goes my squadron. If you're wondering why they lost, it's because the Ampere, which is a craft they were fighting against, and the Lightning Hosts as a whole are extremely deadly to small, fast vehicles, so my squadron didn't stand a chance. Not to worry though, the Ampere appears to be departing back to its own homeland, so it should be smooth sailing from here on out. Let's turn back to the Artemis back east, and oh boy, has she been stacking bodies. A familiar foe looms on the horizon. The Ampere, destroyer of the entire Onyx Buster squadron, is squaring up with the Artemis. Begin. With my ego soothed and the Ampere sinking to the bottom of the seas, I think it's time to give the Onyx Watch some more attention. So let's turn back over to the Onyx Buster Squadron and go in for round 2. Phew. Let's take a break from all the battles and turn back to the Golden Trench, which I have turned into the seat of my power. I've been doing so well against my foes that I've actually maxed out my storage space, so I quickly whipped up this little guy, the Commodity Refinery and Universal Material Bank, or CRUM. It contains enough space to store almost 2.5 million materials and a refinery to create commodities, which are basically Bluetooth materials. It doesn't have any protection because if this thing is getting attacked, I've lost the battle anyways. While I wasn't paying attention, a bunch of Lightning Hood crafts ambushed the Artemis. There's no time for reinforcements. All I can do is hope for the best. Oh man, like I said, the Artemis is truly a reliable ship. Anyways, while I've been fighting those two fronts, I've managed to amass quite a large amount of resources, and so I'm afraid the Onyx Watch's time on this planet is coming to a close. No more waiting to patiently claim territory, it's time to move in and take out the Onyx throne once and for all. Begin. And with that, the Onyx Watch has been defeated. All of their vehicles, harvesters, and buildings have been wiped off the face of Neater, leaving their territory up for grabs. However, the Eastern Front is still active, so I'm going to send the Valkyries back to the Golden Trench to be recycled into new crafts, better suited to fighting the Hoods. And with those materials, I constructed one more ship at the resource node closest to the Eastern Front. The ship in question is one that I've shown off before. An absolute powerhouse of iron and gunpowder, the Jupiter-class pocket battleship. Armed with two rapid-fire 250mm cannons firing tungsten slugs at high speeds, two cram cannons firing high-explosive incendiary shells, two impact BACs for anti-air, an array of smaller broadside deck guns, a dozen large high-explosive missiles, a large amount of interceptor missiles, and some serious armor. This ship is a dedicated brawler that can go blow for blow with just about anything in its weight class. And anyways, once that ship's finished, I immediately sent her into the fire of battle, onto the anvil of war. Battle after battle, victory after victory, and my fleet is finally on the doorstep of the Quartz Stone Fortress, the beating heart of the Lightning Hood's nation. It's time to take down another member of the Council. Begin. As the fortress crumbles, any remnants of the hoods are scattered to the winds, leaving huge areas of territory open for claiming once again. And with that, my enemies for this round of the council are defeated. The only thing left to do is gather my strength and prepare for the